recently on Twitter, Met versus Japan tweeted something. He said, I can't believe people are still doubting the comprehensible input
Mm.
hypothesis.
Yep.
And for me, I saw that on Twitter and I wanted to be like, dude, like who doubts that? You know what I mean?
Lots of
And
people.
I was like, who doubts that? Like, who? I mean, come on. But um, I remembered a video that was released some weeks before that I saw. And I kind of like, I feel like the language community is like almost on two spectrums, like very lovey-dovey. And then there's some other people that are just like, oh, this is trash. I'm discovering fake polyglots. This person is
Mhm.
garbage. So like,
Mhm.
it's like these things. But I like balanced debate. I love kind of when two people go at it,
Mhm.
I always love that. I feel like there should be kind of more of this in the language learning community. But there was that guy who says, "Oh, the myth of comprehensible inputs," and
Yep.
I'm like, okay, I'm definitely gonna watch this,
Yep.
and I go, all right, this is interesting. I mean, I disagree with a lot, but
Mhm.
mm, long story short, this kind of um, analyzing video, like for example, you did with I Can, and what's his name? Nathaniel Drew is his name.
Yep. Yep.
I love that kind of stuff. For me, that's just like awesome. And I thought, oh, maybe I could do something like that. But I just completely forgot about it. So I
Mhm.
was so glad when you decided to talk about it because I'm like, oh, I completely forgot about that. And plus, I knew from your video about these two guys that it was going to be good. So
Mhm.
it just was released the other day. It came out, and I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, there it is. Apparently, there's more parts, but in the first video, you said something that like kind of made me think, because I came into this language world like I came off on the right foot, like just hit the
Mhm.
ground running because literally the people that I found were Moses, Steve, Luca,
Mhm.
and like those guys are about work. Steve's about
Yep.
input, Luca as well. Moses knew how to learn a language perfectly fine or how to take a language to a high level, but he did input for, let's say, 3 months. He tried
Mhm.
to speak it, and served his purposes, but he was never in denial about how languages are learned. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
So I came off like getting a really great education on the whole topic of language learning. But then I
Mhm.
tried to like, you said something like, not everyone knows about this. And for me, I'm like, I had to think about it. And like who are these people? And
Mhm.
in your video, you mentioned something like there's three types of language learners.
Mhm.
One who does it at school, one who believe like the group that believes in inputs. Then what was the other one?
So as a speak early approach. So
Speak
yeah,
early.
I think there are three schools of thought, and it's like people say, well, don't they overlap? And it's like, yeah, they do overlap, but I think the three schools of thought are very different in what they say is important. So um, the input school says like input is the most important and it's what the majority of your time should be spent on. The speak early school of thought says that it's speaking that's important because then you overcome this nervousness that you're going to have about speaking. You get that out of the way really early, and the like sort of grammar and like school of thought is basically stuck in this idea that like if I tell you that the capital of New Zealand is Wellington, and then I ask you right now what the capital of New Zealand is, then you can tell me it's Wellington. And so they're stuck on this idea that languages are like facts. And it's like, it's true. Like, in theory, you could have enough facts in your head about a language that you could then perfectly speak that language. But you're never going to be able to do it at the speed that's required. Like you could, like facts can help you to work things out. Like if you know that it's always going to be this in whatever, in a certain language, then you can go, no, that doesn't sound right. And then like I do that in English. Like I know, actually, why doesn't that sound right? And then go, oh, I guess we would technically have to say this. And then I always decide that the sentence is so clumsy that I'm just going to say it a different way. So facts can help. So, but that's where at some, I kind of associate it with like, I don't know, the 60s this like school of like, if I teach you all the things about French, then you will speak French kind of thing. And that's just, I'm going to say that's not how it works. It's more like you get taught all the things about French through constantly hearing French. Um, so that's what I was saying. I'm not saying that they don't overlap. I was saying that they've got very different emphases on what is important.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think in your second video, you're going to address this more, but just like a basic rundown, what do you think is wrong with his hypothesis, or what is the thing that you dislike the most about what he's communicating to what will be quite a lot of people?
As in what Christian from Canguro English is communicating. So yeah, in the second video, I talk about how he's misunderstood acquisition versus learning. He seems to think that acquisition is like where you just sit back and acquire it and you never actually have to speak it. And he even says, like, imagine if a school told you, I will teach you to acquire knowledge but not actually speak it. I'm like, no one's saying that, dude. Acquisition is a term, and I actually mentioned this in the video. It's a term used to divide something where we don't previously have a division, and that's that difference that I just spoke about. It's like acquisition is the difference between telling you that the capital of New Zealand is Wellington, or you living in New Zealand, and every time you have to go to Parliament or to the government, you have to drive to Wellington. And so no one's ever told you that the capital of New Zealand is Wellington. But then when someone asks you one day, like, what's the capital of this country? Is it Auckland? Because that's the biggest city, so that's what everyone thinks it is. You go, nah, because every time I go to the government, it's in Wellington, so it's got to be Wellington, right? This is a really weird example, but it's really the only thing that I think is learned through like teaching you information is that, like, in facts, not even maths. Like, people use this analogy of like, oh, like you can just teach someone about. Well, no, because like, for example, my mother doesn't understand why two negatives multiplied by each other makes a positive. She's like, she thinks it's just some rule that someone came up with, that like, just because like they decided that that's what it should be. Well, no, that is actually correct. But understanding maths on a deep level would be to understand like, well, if you owe someone money, then that's negative money that you have. And if you owe someone money and then like by a negative number of times somehow, then they actually owe you money. So it does work out. Two negatives really do make a positive. And so I'm getting a little bit off topic here, but like that's what acquisition means. It's this thing of like hearing so much Swedish or so much Spanish that when you come to produce it, certain things just feel right, and people sort of, it sounds iffy, and people go, oh, can you really do that? Well, that's what you've done in your native language, right? That's why if I say to you, I stopped to go to parties, technically that is correct, except everyone would go, there's no way you could actually do that. How do you stop it in order to go to parties? Because that's what I stopped to go to parties means. I think you mean I stopped going to parties, right? And it's like, yeah, right. And so, and there's other examples where it's just wrong. It's not even technically correct. But a lot of the time stuff is...
Interesting example. Yeah, I like that.
A lot of the time stuff is technically correct, but doesn't mean what you think it means. So like, I stopped to go to parties. I stopped to get in the car. That's like, I walked past the car and then I stopped to get into the car. It's like, that's correct. But English speakers, or native English speakers, or high-level English speakers just know intuitively. They hear something that doesn't sound right and they go, that's wrong. And they're not unsure. They're like, I may not know what is correct, but I know that that is not correct. And that's what acquiring a language is. It's hearing it and understanding it so much that when someone says something, and like, this is basic, this is where my Swedish has gotten to. So when I listen to non-native Swedish speakers speak Swedish, they say stuff, I'm like, nah, that's not what you meant. Or that's just wrong. Like genders, for example, I've never studied Swedish genders, but I don't think that there's a noun that I use there's no noun that I would use in conversation that I don't know the gender of. So, and I hear it all the time in people who've like studied the language in this factual way or just spoken early and not had a lot of comprehensible input. They say like, ja, jag skulle gå till min hus. And I'm like, whoa, mitt hus, dude. Like it sounds totally wrong. It sounds almost as wrong to me as it does to a native speaker. They've heard mitt hus their whole life. Okay, I haven't heard it my whole life, but I've heard it for the last 4 years. It's mitt hus, and it's like, you know, that's what it means to acquire the language. It's not the difference between sitting, and that's I've sort of given away the video, but that's fine. Like it's not sitting just listening and going, oh yes, now I know the language. No, it's knowing the language in order to then produce it. Yeah.
I really like the arguments, and the thing that, you know, I love a good debate. I love these kind of like hot takes or whatever, but the thing that I didn't like about the video is because I think that it's kind of almost giving people permission to do what they kind of already want to do, which is like not put in the massive effort that it takes to really learn a language. You don't need to worry about this input thing. Don't worry about that. And it's like,
well, I think Christian would say the opposite, because he's all about hard work, and he says in tons of his videos that it takes like 30 years to learn a language. But the thing is, I think he thinks it takes 30 years because like if you're not focused on input and you're not focused on like noticing things in the way native speakers talk, then it does take 30 years to just naturally get that much exposure to it. But by that stage, there's so many things that you'll say, like assuming you live in the country, and you're not just doing 30 years of just weird input. I don't know. By that stage, there's going to be so many things that you're just in this habit of saying that are wrong or in some way strange. And so it's like, yeah, I don't disagree with Christian that it probably does take 30 years if that's not your focus, if you just go to the country and you live your life, and that's totally fine. But I think in that case, you're going to end up like a friend of mine I work with who is Venezuelan, who has lived here for like 12 years. And that's like, she's not even that old. So I think she's only about 29. So she's lived here since she was 17, right? So and her English, I'm sorry to be rude to her, but it sucks. Like, it's like she just says all this stuff over and over again. It's like, you actually can't say that, but it doesn't matter how much you correct her now because she's just been saying this for 12 years. And I feel like I love her. Like, I think she's great. She's got that super vibrant Venezuelan personality. But I feel like saying to her, Alex, have you never noticed that no one says that? That's only you. Like,
well, we all have a personal way of talking, Lamont.
Yeah. And she also says stuff that like no one understands, because in our work we talk to a lot of new people every day. Like, and she also says this stuff that all the people go, sorry. And it's like, have you not noticed that every time you say that, no one knows what the heck you're talking about?
We were six at the party.
yeah. And it's like, because she's just got this idea that if she just keeps talking and keeps living here, she'll get better. It's like, well, it hasn't gotten better after 12 years. I don't. So I think Christian's just a bit mistaken in what acquisition means, and it doesn't take 30 years, because otherwise, you know, Matt wouldn't speak the insane level of Japanese that he has. Who are some others? Well, Shalmar isn't even 30 years old. And there's I don't know, there's tons of others who speak their language really well. Claudia, she started learning Swedish when she was 18, and by the time she was 25, she had been teaching it for a while then. Like, it doesn't take 30 years. So, yeah.
Cool. All right. So I want to do kind of like a power round, because just to kind of start wrapping it up. So I want to give you some questions, and we don't need to go so in-depthly like we've gone in these previous questions.
I find that hard to do, but yeah.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be very respectful of the time, so I'm going.
Oh, yeah. Don't worry about me. I'm having fun actually.
Oh, thanks, man. Because I think, oh,